Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Petty, and I work with Meat and Livestock Australia as the Goat Industry Project Manager. Thank you very much for joining us for this afternoon's webinar, which is all around the Profitable Grazing Systems program and what deliverers need to know. What we're hoping to do today is give all of our attendees a really thorough run-through of the program, what's involved, what you guys need to know if you'd like to be involved in the program at any point in time. We've got two excellent guest speakers for today's webinar, which is Ronelle Jeffries, who's our Adoption Manager with Meat and Livestock Australia, and Basil Doonan, who from Macquarie Franklin, who helped in the design of the Profitable Grazing Systems program and the pilot that was run last year. Before I introduce those guys, though, just a little bit of quick housekeeping. If you're having any issues in terms of joining today's webinar, or your audio connection, I should say, there's a couple of different options. You can either join on the phone or you can connect via your computer. So those are the instructions up on the screen at the moment, and there's also instructions in the email I sent out yesterday to everyone just to help with your registration. So those are the instructions there if you need to sign up with your computer. We will have all of our attendees on mute today just to help with the noise control. But if you have a question at any point in time, just pop that into the chat function that you'll see there, and you can send that to an individual or the host or everyone. It's entirely up to you. And just pop those in at any point in time throughout the webinar. That is completely fine. I should mention that today's webinar is being recorded. Obviously, because of that, any dates or due dates or application dates or things like that that we might mention in today's discussion are relevant for today, the 31st of May 2017, when the recording is being made. And if you're watching this recording at a later stage on the website, just keep in mind that some of those dates and so forth you might need to just double check with the Profitable Grazing Systems contact. Can I just get everyone to pop a comment or a question or perhaps their postcode into the chat box there, just so I know you can all hear me and you've found the chat box and you're feeling fluid with your fingers there to type in some questions for us later. Awesome. So we've got a couple coming through already. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. It's always lovely to know that I'm not sitting here talking to myself. Okay, so Ronelle, as I mentioned, our first guest speaker for today is Ronelle Jeffries. She's going to start running us through the Profitable Grazing Systems program, just a little bit of background for you all. So Ronelle, if you're ready, what I'll do is I'll just switch it on over and pull your set of slides up, and then we're ready to rock and roll.
Great, thanks, Julie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. As Julie said, thanks for joining us for our webinar today on Profitable Grazing Systems. First slide, Julie. So Profitable Grazing Systems is Meat and Livestock Australia's new flagship extension and delivery program, which aims to improve whole farm business performance of producers. The vision for the program, our long-term vision, is there on the screen, but it's really around this concept of that business profit is a function of management capability plus evidence or data or measure, monitor, manage thinking, as well as an understanding of the value chain approach. So having an understanding of what the customers and consumers within our value chain, and that could be the next person in the chain, or it could be further down the chain, as to what their needs are from a red meat business. So over the history, Meat and Livestock Australia has invested in a range of extension and adoption projects, and we aim to build on those. So some examples are making more from sheep or more beef from pastures and Farm 300. So we're aiming to take the best bits of those programs and build on them to deliver a new program that's quite transformational for industry, in that it really drives adoption and builds producers' business profitability and productivity. So this program, Profitable Grazing Systems, is designed to improve individual business profitability and productivity, And we do that through building producer skills and implementing those in whole farm businesses. Profitable Grazing Systems provides a framework. It's really a framework that builds this industry productivity, and it aims to provide commercial value. It aims to take a more commercial approach to the delivery design. It aims to provide commercial value to service providers and to producers. It really aims to improve the quality of delivery and the quality of programs that we're providing for producers, and build producers' skills and confidence to implement changes in their business. One of the key principles of the program is that we're not aiming to compete with the private sector at all. We want to be complementary to other activities that's going on, but we want to have a measurable impact on producer businesses. Can you go to the next slide, Julie? So there's a range of goals and objectives of the program, but the key goal is that by 2020, we want to be able to increase the average profitability of participating producers' return on assets managed by 2.5% through improving their skills and capability. So our focus is building on skills and reinforcing skills and implementing those in businesses. As I said, PGS, Profitable Grazing Systems, aims to be more commercial in its delivery and provide, I suppose MLA will invest in the delivery model to the extent that we're looking to invest in monitoring valuation results to make sure that we're obtaining an understanding of the impact of the program. So that point 2 there is that MLA will look to invest up to 30% in the delivery model, and that's really about the benefit of monitoring evaluation. Can you go to the next slide, please, Julie? This is the more detailed level of objective. So overall, we're looking to engage about 3,000 producers in the program, but we're looking to make a measurable difference in a range of key indicators that lead us to understanding that business performance will be improved. If you can just go to the next slide. So the way that we're approaching this program is through a supported learning model. So supported learning is based on a coaching mentality or thought. The way we've built this program is around 5 key curriculum areas or areas of focus, and these areas are the areas of business that we believe have the most impact on business profitability and productivity. So we've got curriculum built by industry experts for so they're northern and southern focused, as well as the goat industry. So we've got business management, feed base, genetics and reproduction, value chain, and people. So the idea is with those curriculums, they're built at the national level, but they have flexibility to enable local and regional delivery. So the delivery model is, as I said, built around coaching groups or supported learning groups and feeder activities. So feeder activities encourage producers or provide producers with some introductory skills and knowledge about the potential of what they can achieve. Feeder activities, as their name suggests, feeds producers or encourages producers to go on into supported learning groups where they develop their skills, they practice their skills, and they implement them in the businesses. So the idea of these supported learning groups is where service providers like yourselves come in, working with a group of producers over a period of time, up to 18 months, through a supported learning program that has been developed specific for that group to develop their skills, practice their skills, and implement their skills in their businesses. The program will also be, provide the framework, and we'll be encouraging service providers to operate in their local areas. So the program will also provide professional development for service providers, in that we'll have a leadership group to support deliverers in the development of their supported learning programs and in their delivery. The program and the supported learning groups are underpinned by robust monitoring and evaluation, and that's really to for a number of reasons, but that's really to ensure that producers are receiving a high quality of delivery and a high quality program. It's to enable continuous improvement for deliverers. It's also, and at the highest level, it's also to enable us to demonstrate the program is meeting its KPIs. So underpinned by robust monitoring evaluation, and the idea is that a group of producers would work through a supported learning program over about an 18-month period. Sorry, Julie, could you just go to the next slide, please? So a way of high-level overarching management or governance of how the program is put together, that's on the screen there. And I'll just draw your attention to the leadership team. So what we're looking for is we'll have a 6-person leadership team that covers the geographical areas of Australia, and their role is to work with the service providers to build the capacity of and capability within the industry. So it's really to support service providers develop their supported learning programs, support them through the coaching process, and basically be a sounding board for the program coordinator. Next slide, Julie. Basil, I think it's over to you.
Thanks, Ronelle. Yeah, so in terms of what's in it for deliverers, I've tried to take an approach here, more or less about what's in it for me, and I've colour-coded them. So the first one's more overarching, and I think a lot of the feedback that came through in the development of projects in the project phase was that a lot of the deliverers at the start were really interested in engaging with producers around projects that would fundamentally make a difference at a business performance level. And so a lot of the feedback through that was historically it delivered workshops and delivered a whole heap of information, but there was really no opportunity to follow up and practice. So I guess at a philosophical level, it looks like a lot of potential deliverers and deliverers through the pilot process were really interested in these sorts of projects that would ultimately make a difference to the farm business. The second one there is just that we are, as Ronelle mentioned, moving towards a more commercial model. And I guess in developing any program, you're not going to please everyone, but there was an undercurrent within the consulting space and delivering space that there was a need to move more towards a commercial model, clear the front end of these projects up, and allow deliverers to go into that space unimpeded and to compete almost on a level playing field. So we think we've removed a lot of the noise from that. I guess it's all culminating in very much a user pays front end to these projects. What has become evident both through the pilot phase and through our own work is that these supported learning programs result in the generation of significant consulting work. So there's an ability there to engage with individual producers post the projects, and that's significant. And within the pilot and discussions with the deliverers, there was 2 distinct groups there. Those consultants, I guess, who made that a focus, and they were converting up to 30% of the people engaged in the supported learning projects into ongoing consultancies. And there was another group that didn't try at all, but ended up converting somewhere between 5 and 10%. The next point there is it is a continuous business improvement model. So as Ronelle mentioned, there's a very strong focus on the evaluation. And that evaluation is set up so that the information comes in, it's analysed, and it goes back to deliverers in almost a comparative analysis type framework. So you'll be able to see the feedback from the participants, your self-assessment, and skills audit results, and they'll be combined up, obviously anonymously, but you'll be able to see where you fit against others delivering in that space. Around the commercial model, there was also a need to have a lot of flexibility in delivery, and by that I mean in the delivery method and also the content. So with the curriculum-based approach, there's now the opportunity to deliver across a number of those curriculum areas. Feedback from a lot of the coaches said that one of the areas that they wanted help was in developing these programs. So I guess there's a lot of experience out there putting together workshops, discussion groups, those sorts of things, but not so much in the area of developing the whole supported learning project package. And I guess that was evident both through Farm 300, which was probably the predecessor to this, and also the pilot phase. So one of the focus is access to training, particularly in any MLA developed supported learning projects, but also through the leadership group. We did a survey as part of the pilot as well with the deliverers, and by far the most challenging area was the area of recruiting producers. And as a result, that drove us back to having probably state-based, I guess, coordinators, so people out there in the areas, but in addition to that, a feedback loop that makes sure that if there is a recruitment issue, that we can address that through category A and B type activities, particularly around the concept of running feeders. The next one's sponsorship. I guess in any commercial space, there's an ability to have people pay other than producers. And historically, I guess that's been seen as a subsidy. So we're moving into a space where we say, well, you know, if other people see a commercial opportunity in sponsoring producers through these programs, then we don't have a problem with that. And I guess even in that space, we could consider that MLA might target a specific group of producers and choose to sponsor in that space as well. Next slide, please, Julie. Again, there was a lot of feedback around people developing projects and fearing that they were going to lose their IP. Certainly, if there's new IP brought to the table and it's identified, then that'll remain the property of the proponent, and obviously to be the ability to develop that, it will be retained by whoever the proponent is, and also I guess the opportunity to share or on-sell that IP. Renelle also mentioned that 30% of MLA investment in these projects can be obtained, and that's primarily directed at the M&E, and it's basically, again, if we're going to have a commercial model, then in that space, it's a process of MLA basically purchasing that at a commercial rate rather than just imposing it on the project. So it's being purchased at around $600 per business, which significantly higher than the cost of actually capturing the data. Beyond that, there's access to the PGS M&E templates and assistance with M&E. So there'll be a monitoring and evaluation coordinator, and that person will be available to help people understand and utilise the templates and the tools that exist. They're reasonably extensive, and also to move, I think, the focus away from capturing data that's primarily related to knowledge and information transfer to transfer and development of skills. Additionally, we've been through a lot of the material out there that's in the public space, and I guess information that's currently free and sitting around, and a lot of that material has been collated and is in a toolbox, and it's primarily focused around the curriculum. One of the other areas that I guess came out of the initial discussions was there were two schools of thought. One, and it was probably the predominant one, was that deliverers wanted to develop up their own package and cross over curriculum areas. But there was also a reasonable number of potential deliverers that also wanted materials packaged up. So there's now an ability through the M&E process to identify package shortfalls. And I guess they'll be areas that are significant, so across industry, where there isn't a package and the cost to probably any individual business would be too great, and as a result, that would go through via the national coordinator and be put up as an area for an internal package to be delivered, including training, and then made available to deliverers. There's also a peer support network, so we'll set up a deliverer network, and that will involve access to the leadership group, and also new research and development material will go out to those participating in that peer network. There's also ongoing feedback and support from the coordination team. So additionally, particularly in the project development space, there's a lot of opportunity to interact with both the state coordinators, the national coordinator, and the leadership team in terms of developing these projects. So one of our objectives is to not make the application process overly complicated, because there's a massive cost often involved if there's too many iterations of projects. Certainly in the pilot phase and prior to that in Farm 300, there was up to a dozen iterations of some projects, and that was primarily a result of a hands-off approach to it, which was basically providing some commentary in writing that went back, and people that were putting up projects were basically left to interpret that and try and make sense of it and resubmit, whereas in this instance, it's more about face-to-face or at least phone-based discussion in that space. Next one, please, Julie. Back to you, Renelle.
Renelle?
Button. So what are MLA's expectations from profitable grazing systems and service providers? I suppose what MLA is really after in profitable grazings, or what we see it as, is a really high quality, high value program where producers are able to really drive their business performance. I suppose we'd like to obviously see a measurable impact or measurable improvement in producers' productivity and their profitability. So we're really encouraging, or at least a transition towards a data-based approach using benchmarking, comparative analysis, any type of, I suppose, data comparison process to assist producers understand where they fit. So that's that's the longer-term transition phase that we'd like to go through. I suppose we really want, we would like deliverers to engage with the delivery network in a way that fosters a high value or an improvement in the way that we go about delivering our extension and adoption. We want to foster this user pays culture. With the withdrawal in a lot of states of publicly available extension, we're having to move towards more of a user pays culture. So we'd like to encourage that by providing projects or supported learning opportunities for producers to engage with the outcomes of R&D so that they're able to benefit from it. One of the issues, or not issues, one of the suppose, findings we've had with monitoring and evaluation in the past is that it's not viewed as a continuous improvement opportunity. So under profitable grazing systems, as Basil said, we'd like to make the monitoring and evaluation data more available so that deliverers can use it as a continuous improvement opportunity in the way they go about delivering their programs, so that producers can understand how they're travelling, and basically make that data more available so it can be used in this way. There's a couple of other, I suppose, more process-orientated expectations there. Obviously, we'd like to prioritise the use of MLA information tools and resources, and that is where it's applicable and where it works. I suppose that obviously we'd be encouraging, we'd expect deliverers to abide by the profitable grazing systems principles, and there will be a standard way of acknowledging MLA support for the program, but we will provide guidelines around how that will happen. Next slide, Julie, please. Oh, Basil.
Okay, so I think the final point I made before was looking at the process of how deliverers engage with the program. And initially, that starts with a phone call to the state coordinators, and that's just to quickly explain the concept that an individual deliverer might have for their project, and primarily, I guess, run through the concept of here's the outcomes, it covers off on these curriculum areas, it links to these activities, and it looks to deliver these skill sets. As a result of that, it's pretty much either the state coordinator will say, that sounds good, carry on, or it won't cover off on those areas, in which case there'll be some support provided. So, and that could be in terms of the leadership group or through the state coordinator themselves. Once you get through that first phase, it's just a case of completing the project application form to the state coordinator. So we've already had a few of those starting to come through. Typically, they're about 3 or 4 pages, and I'm guessing it takes around a couple of hours to get the concept onto paper and then resubmitted. If the project meets the PGS requirements, then an M&E plan is submitted. Beyond that, a recruitment strategy is developed, and the assistance of the state coordinator is there if required. And in addition to that, also probably individual members of the leadership group can have some input into that. If the same issues keep coming up around similar curriculum areas, then there's the opportunity to develop standalone feeder activities that can go more widely. If the project doesn't meet the PGS requirements at that stage, again, there's support provided both at the state coordinator or leadership group level. Once it's through the application phase, delivery commences, and there's a strong evaluation and monitoring component. So monitoring starts very early on in order to keep these projects on track. I think one of the things about a supported learning process is that it's quite sequential, and so if the project breaks down early or messages aren't getting across or skill development's not starting to occur, that the subsequent delivery has very little value. So early on is quite an intensive monitoring process, but not onerous, and then that backs off over the life of the project. The M&E data is analysed in-house at MLA, and feedback's provided to the deliverer. If the project's not running according to plan, then there's support provided to improve the project delivery. Obviously, all of these projects will be group based, and they will have a finite life and an end point, and so the end point and the start point of these projects is, in terms of the ME space, is based on a skills auditing process. Back to you, Renelle.
Julie, can I have the next slide, please? So that's the high-level content for in terms of how to engage, what profitable grazing systems is, and what's the benefit for service providers. We understand that we've had a lot of interest and questions around what a supported learning project is and how it might be developed. So we've scheduled or penciled in a few future webinars to provide a bit more detail around some of the key elements of the program. So we're looking to do webinars on supported learning projects, the monitoring evaluation processes and how we might go about those, how to look at the impact, the economic assessment of projects. That was one of the key areas during our pilot program where it was quite difficult to gain an assessment of economic impact, but it's something that we'd like to have a go at in this program. And recruiting producers. What are the types of feeder activities that might be successful, and how might we go about developing those? So the dates are there as draft dates, but we'll confirm those dates closer to the event. And there will also be a feedback at the end of this presentation, which we're willing to take suggestions of other activities or other webinar topics that might be of interest. Next slide, please, Julie. So that's the end of all the formal content. I was just, if you've got any questions, I think Julie might facilitate those, and I think it's put them in the chat box, Julie.
Yeah, that's right. So if anyone's got any questions, and we've had a few come through already, but if anything's piqued your interest and you want to know more, please type your questions into the chat function there. So the first question we've had was just around the number of applications that are currently coming through at the present time and being assessed.
So we've had a few applications come through. I wouldn't, I'd say in the 5 to 10 range. We haven't. It's just been ad hoc so far and word of mouth. So this is our really first wide call, I suppose, for engagement with the program. So at this stage, we're still some of our pilot groups are still continuing, and we've had a few additional applications, but obviously this is our first big call for applications.
So people will be able to, from today onwards, start the application process and start going through finding out more information?
Yep, they will. We'll put up the email address in a minute as where you can do that.
Sure.
So just making the point there, Renelle, that the state coordinators aren't in place, so they'll have to go straight to the national coordinator at this stage.
That's right. So we actually have a call out at the moment for state coordinators. So there's a terms of reference on the MLA website if anyone's interested. But at this stage, supported learning programs will have to go straight to the national coordinator, who's in an interim capacity for assessment.
Cool. Is there any other? Please feel free to type your questions into the chat function if you've got any further questions about the program at all. Is there any further results that have come through from the pilot groups? I think people have seen some of the interim results.
Mm-hmm. Basil, do you have any?
Yeah, look, I'd say overall it looks like the commercial model works pretty well. That recruitment is the major issue. And I think the other really interesting point is that when you look at the size of the businesses that are coming through, they're way above average. And whether that's just a function of ability to pay or what, I'm not sure. But certainly it doesn't appear that we have to be too worried about getting a whole heap of small businesses in that space. They were way above average. So my initial feeling is that commercial model is working well. It's reasonably robust. Obviously, it's impossible not to muddy it a little, but I guess, yeah, it's not as if we're thinking now we've got to write a big rule book around how to go about these, how to target the right sort of producers and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. And the other thing about pilot groups is we've asked for, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, we haven't asked for it. We're asking for it at strategic times throughout the project. So we did beginning, middle and end. So where some projects are still going, so we actually won't get their results for analysis across the groups until they're all finished. So, and not all are finished.
Cool. Thanks, Ronelle and Basil. Okay, we've got heaps of questions coming in now. All right. There's a question around why sole traders are excluded from delivery when they may have previously met MLA's indemnity, etc. requirements in the past.
So that's an MLA rule, I suppose. It applies to the whole company. So yeah, that's just an MLA.
That's a stipulation that's come from the legal team.
Yep.
Yep. Cool. Is this an ongoing call, or will there be call periods?
No. So at this stage, we're looking at an ongoing call. And then working with state coordinators and national coordinators to develop up programs.
Yeah, and I think that's likely to continue, isn't it, Ronelle? The nature of the beast is that it doesn't really suit to have specific calls. People are sort of developing this stuff, and
yeah, that's correct. It's the way I suppose our experience with the pilot program and Farm 300 and the way we think it's going to roll out. It'll be an ongoing call. Obviously, if we're overwhelmed with applications, we might actually have a look at how we do things. But at this stage, it will be an ongoing basis.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Are you able to describe the components of a supported learning program? And there's also some questions around where people can get examples of those and what areas, etc. they cover.
Basil, I might give that to you.
Yep. So I think the main component is that there has to be the skill development. So at the end game is that we have this link between the profitability of the business and capability, and capability is a function of skill. So we want to see that curriculum based. So there's some outcome criteria which link through to activities, learning activities, and then associated learning outcomes. And the other component is the opportunity to practice the skill development within the program. So we know that, just like kicking a football or something like that, you don't get told how to do it and have one go at it and you have the skill. So we want to see opportunities for the skill development. And the other thing is that one of the major things that came through Farm 300, the pilot phase, and does look like it's an ongoing issue, is the amount of material people are trying to cram into these programs. So with the skill focus, typically we'd be looking at the development of just two to three skills within any program. So a lot of the initial projects coming in are based around guest speakers talking about stuff. And it seems like a desire to impart a hell of a lot of information or knowledge through a whole heap of speakers that are more or less entertaining, I guess, on any given day. And there's a real reluctance in there to go over previously covered material. But I think we've just got to get used to the fact that to be in the skill development space, we have to have the opportunity to go over and over. And so a couple of examples might be something like, I don't know, assessing available feed, and condition scoring, things like that. might be the two outcomes from an 18-month program in terms of the skill development. And obviously those things can be linked back to a whole heap of other outcomes. But without those skills, people don't have the ability to change the KPIs.
Cool.
And in terms of some example supported learning programs, I think we can make, after the webinar, we can make some examples available.
Yeah, okay. And if people need... oh, sorry.
There's definitely in the intention. We've actually got, I think we're going to look at one of the projects that was actually iterated a very high number of times as the example of where it started and where it ended, to give people an idea of how you might think about what you need to do initially versus in the supported learning space having quite a tight and neat and almost, I guess, small project.
Okay. Thanks. There's a question around, there was a reference earlier to advisory panels. Are you able to let us know who is on those advisory panels?
I think that was in the supported learning slide. I think that might be referring to the MLA regional consultation model. So MLA has, there is regional producer committees, and they assist us with identifying R&D priorities, and their linkage with this program would be basically encouraging participation amongst their peers.
Was it that, Renelle, or was that a reference to the leadership group?
Perhaps you should now explain the leadership group a bit more.
Okay, well, we don't know who's on the leadership group as yet, but fundamentally, because we're trying to move from one space to another, and there's got to be an ability to support people through this process. Otherwise, it's just all going to be too hard. We came up with this concept of a group of individuals that have had quite a lot of experience in this space, not just in the delivery area, but actually at a level of understanding the link between skill and profit and capability and what's required to embed those skills into producers. So they're the types of people that will end up on that leadership group, and they'll be available to project proponents to help them not just get projects together, but there is an opportunity also to mentor people, because I think when you run the model in terms of achieving the total factor productivity that we require, the biggest limitation is the number of projects and the people to deliver them. So one of the key objectives is obviously to develop, deliver a capacity, but short of just giving that leadership, that lip service, I guess, we wanted to do something significant in that space, and that was the evolution of the leadership group.
There's another question that's come through relating to, in the results, the interim results that you've seen from the pilot, whether they apply to cattle producers or sheep. And I suppose it's both, isn't it? I mean, there's been a real mix of producers with these groups, hasn't there?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. So we had sheep, cattle, and goat producers in our pilot.
Mm-hmm. And a variety of locations.
Northern and southern.
Yep. Excellent. Okay, cool. Okay, so there's still plenty of questions coming through. Okay, so here's a good one. In order to measure an increase in your ROAM, your ROAM of 2.5%, you need to know what it was for those producers in the first place. So is there therefore an expectation that everyone gets that information off their participants at the beginning of the project?
Basil might give you that one.
In an ideal world, yes, but we know that's not going to happen. So One of the things I guess that's running alongside this is some way of measuring that at an individual farm level and bulking that data up to the industry, so that we want to get to the point where we can say that deliverers might be interested in collecting that, but if they're not, the link between profit, key performance indicators in the business, the areas of the curriculum and the skill development in that space is now monitored and proven. And so there's a project sitting alongside this one that's in the development phase that will ultimately end up taking care of that, so that we don't have to try and convert all the people that are highly technically competent or give them a migraine trying to cobble together economic data if that's not their area of specialty. We actually did ask it in the pilot, and it was a huge challenge for a lot of people, as you'd expect. And so there is the opportunity to train in that area. That's why one of the webinars is around that. And I think, not sure if he's out there, but Ian McLean basically coined the phrase that you know, this is defendable, but it's not entirely complete in terms of a full economic analysis of the business and how it might change over time. But just having some data there, I think, down the track allows a lot of individual deliverers to be then able to make the sorts of value propositions to producers that will then see them stumping up the amount of money that needs to come forward to justify these projects.
Thanks, Basil. There's another question that's come through relating to how the producer skills will be audited. If are you looking at some sort of self-assessment or a third-party assessment, something out in the field?
Yeah, so I think one of the issues, again, is that a lot of the skills audits have been dominated by knowledge and information-based questions. And so going forward, there will be more of a focus on proof of the skill development. And so I do see that a lot more of it will be field-based potentially. So, you know, we take the example of condition scoring. It's a pretty simple exercise to say score 50 sheep or cattle at the beginning of a program and then score 50 at the end and say, well, people have either gone forward, stayed still, or potentially gone backwards. So there will be a requirement to absolutely undertake activities in the M&E space that allow us to definitively say that there's been an improvement in skill.
Thanks, Basil. So, will MLA be investing in extension projects outside of profitable grazing system, or would this be the only mechanism for deliverers to engage?
No, so this will be the key, our key program, but obviously we'll have other programs that potentially link into profitable grazing systems or may have their own focus. So as an example, the producer demonstration sites are an existing program that we have running that will still run alongside profitable grazing systems, but there's obviously opportunities to link between the two. So so we will still have other extension and adoption programs in the marketplace, but this will be our key flagship program to build skills and improve business profitability.
Just one other area there, Ranelle, that I guess raised its head during the pilot process and Farm 300 was, I guess there's a lot of anecdotal evidence in this space, but not a lot of hard data. So one of the areas will be around projects and papers and research, I guess, that clearly make some of these links.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so this one's actually, I think, a really good question and good observation. What if participants create new solutions, new knowledge, or some type of innovation during their learning activities? How will this feed into the curriculum or to R&D for testing and validation?
That's actually a really good question. So we have a process of looking at how we might bring in new R&D from that the MLA or the industry is invested in. So I think we don't have a formal process at the moment. We do have feedback mechanisms. So I think it would be great to capture some of those things that producers are, the changes they're making and those innovations, because I think R&D can come as much from producers as it can from the technical experts. So I'd say we don't have a formal process at the moment, but we definitely would be interested in that feedback so that we can capture it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the other issue is that if you look at the project basically lives and dies by the performance of the state and national coordinator. There's a heck of a lot of subjective activity that's going to have to go on, conversations in the background. I'd be hopeful that some of those issues would be raised through that process. So people wanting to extend their programs to cover some of those new innovations or learnings should be able to be observed and captured by the state and national coordinator.
Yep. Okay, so there's another question just around how time-consuming it is to develop materials to support skill, practice and learning. There's a suggestion that it would be very helpful if MLA had a pool of bite-sized materials that practice and test all types of skills learned in the program, and then deliverers can pick and choose which of these materials to bolt onto their programs.
Yep. So MLA, I suppose we've always said that MLA would be willing to invest in areas of in programs and resource development that will assist in key areas that are strategically aligned. So I think part of this program is there's an opportunity for service providers to build their own thing if they're looking to potentially create a space in the market for themselves. But I think it's definitely, if there's enough demand across the program for particular products and resources, MLA can invest in those. We did identify during our pilot program, we did a bit of an audit of some of the programs and resources that are out there. So we have identified some areas already that we believe need resources, and that was done with our curriculum working group. So yes, MLA can invest in some of those areas.
And I think the other reality in that space is because there hasn't been a focus on skill development in the extension space, that there isn't a whole pile of activities. There's a lot of tools and there's a lot of material and manuals and all that sort of stuff, but there actually isn't a lot of activities there at the moment. And so as people start feeding back through their M&E, the activities they're undertaking and trialling, they will be then used to populate the curriculum, which does go all the way from sort of the learning outcome through to the activities required to develop the skills.
Cool. Has any market research been undertaken in relation to producer interest to pay for services? And if so, what sort of amount are we talking about?
So MLA's there's been so this program was based on the first piece of market research we did was a skills and training needs piece of market research, and in there was the questions about willingness to pay. It's always something really difficult to assess because it's I suppose how much are you willing to pay for anything? You don't really know until you actually understand the value. So what that market research did tell us is that it tends to be larger producers and younger producers that are willing to pay. But in terms of how much are they willing to pay, it really depends on value obtained. But we feel that there's probably a threshold. The lifetime use management program has probably set a bit of a threshold in a lot of these spaces.
Yeah, I think that's right. The issue is that there's not that many of these programs around, and the success or what they're valued at in this space is much more a function of the deliverer and the experience than it is about the materials and the weighty manual they go away with. So I can say that we will be delivering to probably less people. They will pay more, and we're hopeful that the outcome will be significantly higher. So it has been an issue for, I guess, and you can comment, Renelle, MLA to get their head around, which is, you know, once you go into this user pay space, you are narrowing the market.
Yep, and that's exactly right. So MLA, where our belief, I suppose, is that we're willing to move into this user pay space because we're looking to engage with producers that are willing to invest in their future of themselves and their business, so that are actually willing to pay for quality programs. So, yeah, so it is actually, which means we will be working with less producers, but we're looking to work with those that are actually willing to invest in their futures.
Renelle, for those who aren't familiar with the program, you mentioned there was a threshold set for, was it lifetime new management?
Oh, yes.
Was that?
So,
sorry.
I was going to say, so lifetime new management, so you were asking
what the threshold is? Yeah.
I think it was about, I think it's about $2,000.
Okay, and that was a similar sort of program in terms of time commitment, that type of thing?
Yep. Well, that would be my understanding.
Yep. Okay.
I think also there, just to add a point there is an issue around whether that $2,000 is per individual, it gets cheaper for the second person, or it's per business. So, yeah, I think anywhere between that $2,000 and $3,000 per business for 2 to 3 participants is seems to be what people consider reasonable. And then there's all sorts of ways of trying to determine what the fourth person's worth, or whether you go on an individual basis.
Yep. There's a question that relates to the pilots and whether or not those were free for the producers and how those were sort of priced.
Oh, Basil, can you?
Yeah, they were. So what happened was that the deliverers were given X amount of funds to deliver these. I should just go back a step. So this was part of determining what people would pay and what they would pay for. So the amount of money that was charged was cross-referenced with the curriculum material. So, you know, would people pay heaps of money to do pastures because they all like running around out there versus, you know, willing to pay a lot less for business management stuff where they got to sit in a room and that. So literally they were allowed to use something like about $10,000, which was what MLA gave to them to participate in the program. So it was literally, we're going to ask you to do $10,000 worth of stuff over and above the project, but you can use that in recruitment or to offset the cost. And so that's where we got our feel for what people could charge. So there were some that were, I guess, subsidised to the tune of probably $1,500 per business in supported learning programs that were probably priced around $3,000 per business, through to people who went 100% $3,000 per business, no use of those funds other than for the material we required over and above delivering the programs. So, yeah, there were ones who used that money to offset the costs, but the majority of people charged full commercial rate.
Cool. So there's a question that was around the M&E collection and how this process is going to work. So I guess there's a concern around a focus on Word documents, paper-based data collection, and manual entry. How will it look? Is there some sort of automated data collection process with, and what's the feedback turnaround in terms of getting feedback back to the group?
So look, I think the answer is we're open to, at the moment there's no automated system. We'd be quite, I'm going to say MLA would be great if we could get it. I think we're open to looking at different tools and how we actually collect the monitoring and evaluation data. So it doesn't necessarily have to be paper-based. And in terms of, I suppose, and there will be a collation point, the National Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator will be the person responsible for collation and analysis of that data. Turnaround times, we haven't set those yet. Look, I suppose the aim would be to get those back to deliverers as fast as possible, given that we would like, our vision, I suppose, is that monitoring and evaluation is used as a continuous improvement opportunity. So obviously, deliverers need that as fast as possible. But at this point, we haven't actually set those service levels.
No, and I think the other thing there is, definitely in the M space, we're looking to have that material back in between meetings, obviously. Otherwise, it's not really of much use. So the M stuff, the self-assessment and the participant assessment was going back in the pilots very quickly, so within a week or two. And I guess if there's a lot of stuff going, it's going to be prioritised. So it'll go back more quickly if there's an issue than if there's not an issue. And in terms of the paper-based data collection, I mean, I think in the skills audits around skill, if we boil it down to capturing skill-based data, they can be a heck of a lot more succinct than what they currently are. They're in the order of 15 to 20 questions, primarily because we're capturing probably the wrong sort of data. And then we definitely are encouraging other methods like use of videos or clickers or apps or anything to collect the data, as long as it can come back in a format that can be collated into the MLA system.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so there's another question just around, so this perception that's been encountered already around the user pays with potential partners that could promote their networks. They see the farmers paying dollars in and then asking for advertising to use their asking for advertising to use their networks, even though MLA is investing. Will there be an advertising budget to help with this? So I think this question really relates back to the feeder activities, and perhaps you guys might be able to expand on that a little bit.
Look, my feeling is there is a budget for feeder activities, and I definitely, there's been a shift from more beef and pastures making more from sheep around feeders being standalones to the point now where they must link to a skill development project or activity down the track. And feeder activities, I don't know if they're a new concept or not, but they work incredibly well. So I think there'll be a strong focus on promotion. And I think that because we're trying to charge a significant amount of money, that these feeder activities give a much better opportunity to demonstrate value than just the old paper-based email of something's on or a letter or whatever. I don't know if I also picked up in there that there was an issue around sponsorship maybe, and whether people were looking to sponsor and then asked to be able to advertise. I guess that's where the state coordinators, in conjunction with the national coordinators, will come into it around how much are they sponsoring for the material that needs to be delivered versus just using it as a cheap method of getting a mailing list together or something.
Yeah, so the person who asked the questions just elaborated a bit more and said that, for example, one of the regional land care networks
Yep.
was saying that there was private benefit from the program, so wouldn't promote it through their network, but if it was free or low cost, they would have.
Yes. Yep. I think that's just part of the transition.
Yep. Okay, well, I think we're sort of starting to run out of time, but if there's any further last-minute questions, please do send that through. And from here, well, did you guys want to quickly move on to what we need to do, what people should do from here, and then we can do a final check and see if there's any further questions?
Yep. Well, so that's the next slide, Julie.
Yep.
So, yeah, as we've said before, Profitable Grazing Systems will open for business. We're more than willing to have the chat about potential supported learning programs or receive them. So we're expecting, as I said before, we've got our state coordinator terms of reference out at the moment. We're in the process of national permanent national coordinator recruitment. So we're expecting to have our coordination team in place by early August. But in the meantime, Leanne Sheriff is acting with Basil and are acting in the national coordinator role. So Leanne is the person to have a chat to around supported learning programs. So I'll put her email up there. Contact Leanne and about any ideas.
Renelle, you mentioned earlier there was going to be a monitoring and evaluation coordinator. Is that also being advertised at the present time?
Yes, it is. So our ideal would be that one of the state coordinators also acts as a national monitoring evaluation coordinator, although we are open to having that position as separate. So the terms of reference for the state coordinators and the national monitoring evaluation coordinator are in the one document, all available on our website at the moment. Just if you go to the MLA website, in the search bar, type tenders and go to that page and it'll be on there.
What I can do, everyone, after the webinar, we'll send around a link to where you can find the recording, and I can also provide in there a link to where that information is located on our website if there's anyone who's particularly interested. Okay, so we haven't had any other final questions come through. Is there anything further, Basil and Renelle, that you guys would like to add to the discussion? Otherwise, we might wrap up.
No, all I do is encourage people to have that first conversation with Leanne, because I know there are issues around, you know, time to develop stuff and development costs and all those sorts of things. So, yeah, I think if we look at this narrowing of the project in terms of the skills-based outcomes, that it's possibly not as onerous as what people might think, and that was certainly some of the feedback from the pilot process.
No, I just want to reiterate what Basil said. Look, it's great for people to just have that first conversation with Leanne. From MLA's perspective, I suppose we're quite excited about this program, so we'd really like to, and hope that it offers a lot of value to yourself. We're really looking forward to seeing how it all plays out.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Basil and Renelle. I suppose the other point too is that by collecting some of that monitoring and evaluation data and getting that feedback back from MLA, it's an opportunity to help sell and tell your own proof of profit story about, you know, how you've helped that group of producers develop and the profitability improvements that you might have seen. So there's all sorts of opportunities going forward. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time in joining us for today's webinar. We're very excited about the program, and so excited that so many people registered their interest and wanted to join up for today's webinar and find out more. It was about 115. So what I will do, as I said, this is being recorded. So once we've got that recording uploaded, I'll forward you all the link along with some information about those positions that are being advertised at the moment. Renelle, what's the deadline for applications for those?
For the state coordinators is the 22nd of June, I think.
Excellent. Okay, cool. So you've got a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's about it, everyone. Thanks very much again for your time, and we'll wrap up today's webinar there. Thanks again.
Thank you.